Ignition sequence start.
And we are live with the Primas in 5,
4,
3,
2,
1.
Hey everyone, it's Prima Jess.
Peace and love, it's Cindy B.
And this is the Primas Podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Primas Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Prima Jess's sister, Amanda. Amanda is in the house. Yay! Thanks for being here, Amanda.
Hi, everyone.
So, okay, the reason why we have a special guest, and it was very last minute, so thank you to our special guest for your time. We wanted to talk about the documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, and we've just been hearing a lot about it, and it literally just hit me today that my cousin, I know that she doesn't have social media and she hasn't had it for a really long time. So I'm like, that's pretty cool because we're going to talk about the documentary, which kind of is like I don't know. I want to get into the conversation because I thought it was kind of like weird. Amanda, did you watch it, by the way? Did you watch The Social Dilemma?
I did, yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Jess, did you want to say anything before we get started?
Yeah, especially after watching the documentary. And Amanda was with me when I was watching it, so she had seen it for the second time with me. And I just looked and I'm like, whoa, Amanda, you're like a diamond in the rough. Like no one in the planet besides her does not have a social media. Or if you don't, or if you come off saying that, you're so weird, right? It's like, okay, well, you don't have a social media, like quote unquote. And it should be for like a...
I've got that many times, taking it, like not being part of the whole, like crowd with it. Like people have looked at me so differently, or even like going out places and they say, hey, the thing was like, hey, let me catch your Instagram name or social media, whatever. And I'm like, I have a phone number to give you. Like I don't have a social media account. And then they look at me like, well, this was years ago. And they say, oh, you're 24, 25 without social media. Like, are you crazy? Or is this like a joke just to not keep in contact, So I felt that like many times and like the pressure. And it's just like, why do I need to have one? Was my question. But yeah.
That's crazy. So you're like an outcast, right? For not like in this day and age, you're the outcast for not being on social media. I think it's super cool though.
Yeah.
Because that takes, I don't know. I kind of wanted to quit my social media a while back, and then I deleted my old one, and I kind of restarted to like, but with the rebranding type of like motivation behind it. So it's a very different take on it, but I still think it's cool because I take breaks, from social media. Which I love this documentary because it kind of exposes like the psychological strategies, that they use to manipulate our brains to be into social media, which is like the likes, which is like feeling a part of, like when I do take breaks from my social media, it hurts a little bit because my I don't know how you call it, but like my flow of people who are like kind of like interacting with me, I'll lose it. And I know that I'm trying to self brand and then I'm jeopardizing by taking these breaks, but I need to because I feel weird sometimes. It becomes way too much for me and I'm like, I got to disconnect right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then when we were watching it, I love their analogy of like how we were rats in a lab being addicted to sugar. And it talks about the physiological addiction they have done to us for the last 15 years, which blows my mind. And when me and Cindy were talking about it, she would always say, like, how did you not know, Jess? This is your first time hearing it. And it is, in a sense, like, I didn't realize how deep in our mind they had manipulated us. And like they even said in the documentary, how they used their own psychology against us. And to me, I was like, whoa, I never knew I was a rat in the maze until that moment. I'm like, how did they get me in so deep into it, And so that's what I'm excited to talk about. Like, I want to hear your guys' interpretation. because I know me and Cindy have our different, and Amanda, obviously, for her to completely be disconnected from all social platforms.
Yeah. So I want to start real quick, um, just by saying that if you haven't seen the movie, please check it out. The Social Dilemma. It's it's really good. But I kind of feel like how Jess was saying earlier that like I kind of knew about this, but also I'm like a behavioral enthusiast. I really love to study human behavior and like motivation, and so that's kind of how this movie for me is just depicting like our capitalistic materialistic world, and it's all big businesses like Nike, Coca-Cola, like Google, whatever you think of, all of these businesses operate on the same exact. They try to create a dependency between the person using the application or whatever, because that's how you create revenue, and that's just business. That's any business that creates revenue. Like they need to build. Even when I had my business, I wanted my clients. I was a personal chef for a little bit, and I wanted my clients to be dependent on my service, so that because I was dependent on their money for my income. You know what I mean? For my
Yeah.
thinking about it that
Like
way
you're trying
is
to.
yeah.
Oh, I was just saying,
Sorry,
like
Amanda, what
you're
were you saying?
trying to convince. I was just saying, like you're trying to convince your clients, like you need me, so this is why you should be keep buying for me, or this is why you need my services, and that's I feel like that's what
Yeah.
the social media platforms are doing. Is what they mentioned in the video, like they're all in a competition on whose life they can get more out of.
So, Amanda, why did you choose to stay, and why do you continue to choose to stay off? Like, I guess that's the biggest
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. So, well, I'll just start off, going into the moment where I decided to completely get off the social platforms. For me, it was like a turning point life personally, 2017. But prior to that, I had like MySpace, Facebook. So, I did use it. It's not like if I didn't use it at all and I had like no sense of like what everyone else is using, like I did use it and I was part of it. And a part of me, I was just like, what am I doing with my life? And, I need to be more focused in school. And what's preventing me from, achieving my goals and becoming like the person who I know I'm capable of being. And when I did decide to go back to school, like 2017 to 2018, that was like a point in my life. And then my professors were so like encouraging of that aspect too, saying like, a lot of psych professors being that too. Psych professors, they were saying, focus on you. And they didn't quite understand like the whole social media platforms too, like giving so much of your time to that when you can be focusing on yourself. So I was like, oh, okay, like I do have social media and like, how does it make me feel? And like, what am I getting out of this? And so at one point I was just like, why do I need to record myself like going home? Like, why does anybody need to know what song I'm listening to? Or what am I eating? Or like, where am I going? Like, why do I need to tag? Like, it was just like mind blowing. And then when I kind of like you step back from it and you're just kind of seeing everybody, like they mentioned in the movie, like they're all in this bubble, and it takes so hard to like take a step back and seeing like what a beautiful world this is. And I think like that's where they left off, like the last scene that was in the movie. Like step back and enjoy what this world has to offer. There's other ways to connect with people, but everybody has their own views and intakes on how social media is beneficial to you. Like Cindy, for instance, your business, I totally agree with that. With anyone, communicating, like in my job personally, our school, we have social media platforms, and that's how parents connect with each other. You find like support groups. So it does have its good and its bad, but like for me personally, it was just taking too much of my time into what I like prioritized, which was school. I was waking up to social media, going to sleep to social media in between my days, and I could getting better sleep, reading or doing other things, socializing with my friends and like all of that. So I for me personally, I just think it was more negative than more positive outcomes from social media. Yeah. Oh, and then
That's
also,
crazy.
and yeah, like another thing was, I guess like identity. I was hearing so many things from like my friends and even me too. I was like, wow, like like, are these the new trends? You know, I think back then people were doing like lips at the time until it's like blew up right now. You know, getting like fake butts or, you know, modifying their bodies to think like they have to be something that they're not, you know? Like
Mhm.
I feel like those platforms are putting up like unrealistic ideas of what beauty should be. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like we're taking 10 steps back from embracing who you are, you know? So, you know, I would hear from my friends like, oh, you know, this girl looks like this. I want to look like her. You know, I'm totally for like self image and all of that, but I feel like social media was also getting to people's minds and you know, telling them like what they should look like too. You know, so I didn't like that too.
Yeah, it definitely
Yeah,
exploits your weaknesses,
yeah,
as does, makeup or the make and model of a car, right? Like, like there's Toyotas, but then there's like Mercedes Benz. Like, we put so much effort into like the materialistic part of our lives, like how we look. I think is also materialistic. It's like that's, what should matter is how you feel, how what you're doing in life, how you, I don't know, something deeper, or at least that's what matters to me. And so I did decide to quit social media um maybe 2 years ago. And then I met this guy that I keep talking about, Gary Vee. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about him. He's the reason why I even started my business and I did the podcast. Like, it's very motivational because he explains a healthy way to use social media as free advertisement, in a way, free marketing, because that's what self branding is. And so, but I still find myself getting in the trap because you have to, in a way, build relationships, right? Like, I still have to, like I said, when I take my breaks, it hurts because I know I'm going to lose some of the attention that I had gathered in during that time. And um and just that interaction when people like, if I do post and people DM me like, oh, that's cool, this or that, it's just like I'll lose that. People will forget. And so my peace of mind is so important, and so that's why I log off. But it's still something that I'm like, it's on my head, like I'm like, I wonder what I'm not seeing. I wonder what if someone messaged me of a business opportunity, so it is weird. It's like a weird relationship that I'm still trying to learn about. But the psychological tactics that they use in the video,
Yeah.
Jess, you were very like not into it. Tell us more about that.
Yes, because even though I was as shocked as I was on how addicted we've been for the last 15 years, and Amanda says it, like her professors didn't resonate, it didn't hit them because it came about in our generation, which were all millennials. So they don't understand how quickly it set off for us. But the ones who are deeply affected negatively is the generation after us, which is the Generation Z, right? And it shows the stats on how bad, and like Amanda was saying, how these girls are growing up thinking or wanting to look like their filters. And to me, yeah, it was kind of cool. And I can distinguish that because thank goodness I already had gone through my worst stage in life, which was middle school and high school, which they point out. But imagine that ridicule or that those standards, much
Being
percentage
highlighted.
went up. And to me, it's like these people admitted it on the documentary, which again, I was a little clueless to, which I didn't realize how there's no restrictions for these guys. They said there's more restriction on like human donors and restrictions on everything else but this. And it's been 15 years. So I'm like, well, why hasn't there been more restrictions? And maybe it just took 15 years worth of data to see how bad it's got, if that makes sense. So even though, yes, I'm a psych major and I love human behavior, I didn't realize, you know what I mean? I feel like the mirror finally hit me in the face, or I'm finally looking in the mirror and I'm like, whoa, I did not know I was, what did you call them, little drones? Like the analogy they use, how we're all living in our own little Truman Show. And that blew me
Mm.
because I love that movie. And then I didn't also know, well, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, we're all living in our own Truman Show. And it tripped me out when he said, even though we all have Instagram, right? Like, we're looking at different things And I didn't know that either. I was like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, me and Cindy,
Really?
50% of the same friends. What do you mean we're looking at different things? And it's because of our likes. And it
Yeah.
caters to me. You know what I mean? I'm like, how the fuck does my Instagram have a mind of its own, essentially? And they see
It
that.
Yeah,
knows more
and that's what the
about
videos.
you
Yeah, exactly.
So
than you
yeah.
know yourself.
And I also too disconnected from social media for like the first time in 2018 when I went to Cal State LA as a full-time student. I only deactivated all my social media for 4 months. That's it. And then when I came back on it, I just turned off all my notifications. And I thought that was an eye opener. And I don't know what made me only do that. I think Amanda, right? Like Amanda was like encouraging me, like, Jess, you
Oh yeah.
like she was giving me like a sobriety chip like every month. She was like, awesome, Jess, today's your 30 days. You haven't had any social media. She's like, how do you feel? And I'm like shaky. I'm like, Amanda, let me see really quick. Let me just see.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just let me
Yeah.
just you hold it, but just scroll and I'll look at it.
Yeah. From far.
Right.
So
Like when I
what
go
were
ahead, Jess.
you saying?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, like when I did get off of it at that time, I felt like so much weight like got off my shoulders. I was like, why isn't everybody on this, on the same boat as me? Like, it's amazing what you can do other than, like scroll on your phone. I was like looking at everything, taking everything in, and it was so nice. And then that's why I told like all my friends and family, like, like we don't need this. And then, so Jess did it for a couple months, but, I was rooting her on, but it just, seeing the struggle, I'm just like, it's already in us, to like want it, and it just shows like, look at how long people can go without it. And, they describe it as like a drug, like what Jess was saying too, it is an addiction, and it just blows my mind.
Speaking of it's like a drug, they in the documentary they explain like dopamine hits, right? Is that the verbiage they use? Okay. So they explain that we get a dopamine hit each time, and this is essentially how we become addicted, or not necessarily addicted, but it gets us into wanting to interact. There's like an itch because there's like someone liked your picture, someone commented, or you commented on this, or it was funny how they had like the three people behind the scenes being like, "Oh, hit them with a like from so and so from the party, whatever," right? To me,
Yeah.
it's just sophisticated software. It's sophisticated software that studies human behavior. But like I said, my argument is that it's no different from, for example, processed sugar. So, like white sugar or any type of processed non whole sugar, there's no regulations behind that at all. And it causes so much damage and so many diseases, and doctors won't ever tell you about it. No one will tell you about it. And so, this can also, like, we don't know yet, right, what like the social media impact is going to have on like the Gen X or anybody else, right, because this is so new to us. But I think it's like the regulation part, there's so many businesses and there's so many things making profit that isn't regulated. And I feel like for a very long time I never trusted those types of business systems because I always knew you have to create that dependency. You have to create those dopamine hits so that people can come back for more. And Coca-Cola is huge, and it's because of dopamine hits based off of refined sugar and high fructose corn syrup, which is legal is illegal in other countries, and here it's legal. You know what I mean? So it's crazy because we're in the video. It says that it's like, yeah, it's so bad, this and that. There's a lot of stuff that's not being regulated. If there's an interest, if there's lobbyists in someone's corner, you know what I mean? Like that's it. That's all we need. And so I liked the video because every time it would say, "Oh, you're getting a dopamine hit." To me, it would be like anytime someone eats junk food, we're getting a dopamine hit. When we watch pornography, we're getting a dopamine hit. When we're angry and we're reactive, if we have a reactive personality and we fight with someone, we're angry, we take it out on them, we're getting dopamine hits. When we have sex, we're getting dopamine hits. Candy, soda, pizza, you know what I mean? There's so much that causes these pleasure chemicals in our brain to go off. So I thought that part was cool because, yeah, I didn't know, Jess, that a lot of people didn't know. Like everybody thought people started telling me about the documentary. Like my mom was like, "Oh my God, we need to limit pieces intake," which my daughter is rarely. I don't ever have her really on the phone that much, and I model it right. Like I can't be on my phone and say you can't be on the phone either. Like I put my phone away when I'm around her a lot. But yeah, like these dopamine hits, like they happen, and there's a thing called dopamine detox. So that's one thing that I want. Like I would, when I take breaks, I take like the apps out of my phone and I log off, I log off so that I can't get to them. And like nobody ever remembers passwords, so I know it's going to be like a whole thing. So I on purpose will log out and um to kind of do like a cleanse, and then like, and sometimes it takes a really long time, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it until I feel better. And I'm like, oh man, because it's like people get hurt when you don't reply to their messages, or people get hurt, and I do that. I take those breaks. I do it on purpose, and I'm like, I can't, like, I won't. I'll turn off my notifications. Um, so yeah, that part was cool, like the dopamine explanation, because a lot of things causes that reaction, or no, that pleasure chemical.
Yeah, you're right. And that's exactly what dopamine is. It's a pleasure chemical in our minds. And when we say pleasure, we don't mean sexually. Like me, I love chips, right? Specifically hot Cheetos since I was a kid. And I get like a dopamine release in my mind every time I'm eating it, because that's how I could eat like a entire family size bag to myself, because my mind's like, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. Like forever on your moment on your lips, forever on your hips is thrown out the window, and I can eat like a whole bag of hot Cheetos to myself. Remember, Prima, when I was just like drunk aggressively, like a handful? Like,
oh, I want some now. I haven't had them in a really long time.
I know. So that's what we mean. We don't mean like it's not it is categorized as a pleasure.
It is pleasurable, but it isn't sexual. Correct. Although, like, if we're talking about sexual activities or thoughts or whatever, but all of these things, we're so addicted to those dopamine hits. And so it comes from chips, from social media, from any, a lot of different things, whatever your triggers are, right? Or your preferences. But what I'm trying to say is that this video is kind of like blaming, and I blame like Big Sugar for having so much interest in the government, and the money that they produce and like how much power they have. But at the same time, it's like at some point we got to turn the finger and point it back at ourselves and say we need to use this as a tool. We need to use this. I'm using it as a tool, and I don't play the game. I don't play the algorithm, because when I do take breaks, that hurts my algorithm, and I know that, and I'm like, right, like I'm trying to find my balance, and it's probably not going to make any sense, but that's just my style. Hopefully, you know what I mean? Like I put that out there, but yeah, it's just crazy because we're so addicted to those dopamine releases, and we don't question ourselves, and we don't question our own, like, if it is chips, and I don't know if you still do this, Jess, but it's just like, don't buy chips, right? For me, same thing. There are certain junk foods that if I see it in front of me, oh my God, it's like, I'll, like my mom, I found chocolates in her closet the other day. They were, I don't know, they were just, there was a bag in there. I finished them in like 2 days or 3 maybe. And it's like, why? And she's like, oh, they were yours or something. You told me to hide them. And I'm like, don't. Why did you tell me where they were? Because it's like weird, right? And so people are like, you're so healthy. You eat so well. I don't buy anything outside of that, because if I do go to someone's house or if someone offers me junk food, I'm probably gonna say yes.
No.
So because that's my dopamine release, and it's bad, and I spend a lot of time on YouTube.
And then another thing that like made me,
that's random.
I didn't realize how crazy this was about like the no regulations with them, was when they said they created this for peace and love, right? They wanted to encourage that in people's lives by liking the button, and they didn't realize this monster they had created. So all the creators who like initiated all of this in 2005 were like, we're done with it, like deleted, like we didn't realize how bad it was. And some of them were being advocates to like put like regulations on it, and it's like, what do you mean? Why? How did you guys not know? Or they were just thinking they were going to do more good, or subconsciously, like, I don't know. But what I also mean about like no regulations, how like my phone is off, I'm not even using it. But it has happened with me and Cindy. Like we're talking about something in like whatever material thing it might be. Prima, I forgot what we were talking about in Colorado, but it was this product. And then sure enough, I went onto Facebook and I never searched it on my phone. And it
Oh yeah.
as advertisement. And then Cindy was like, "You didn't know that?" And I'm like, "No, dude." And then I like we were talking about it. I was like, "Dude, this happened like not that long ago." So like a couple of months prior to August of this month was like the first time I became like conscious of it. And I'm like, "Are you freaking kidding me, dude?" And then she like, Cindy jokes around and like talks into her phone and it was like, "F you, big brother, like we're not afraid. Don't upset it. Shh, shh, shh. Don't get it angry." Like phone's
You're
gonna
like,
like
shut up. They're looking at us.
I got a little paranoid like with all these facts, but I'm like, that's what I mean. Like, how is my phone listening to me? But then Amanda, do you want to like explain how like we can control that? Like you can turn off certain things on your devices where your phone doesn't do that, and it's not always trying to like, I don't know. Do you want to go into it?
Oh well, sure, I guess. I guess like after the documentary, they talked to all of everybody who was contributing to the documentary, and they were saying like how to, I guess, limit them not following you or to take away your search history and things like that. So I went on to do it, and you can control like your settings on your phone, like with Google, I guess email and notifications and things like that. So I was like looking into it, and so yeah, once I took off all of the settings that were already like pre-done for me on my phone, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like you go into it and it's just like, oh, like let Google have access to your locations, and have that on, and like everything, like sync calendars and just your everyday things. And I'm just like, whoa, like this is just too much. So I didn't know it had like that much control, especially Google being like one of the top search engines, if not the top search engine. And it just like blew my mind, like all of this was like already like pre-done, and I had to like limit everything. And now like when I go onto Google, like none of my search history's on there, like I don't see anything, and it comes up with like random stuff now, which I like. So I'm like as limited as, but how I don't even know like how deep down it goes from there. Like I just see what's like up on the prompt of the phone, but other than that, it's just like I don't know how far deep this goes into, like our history, them locating everything, but it's kind of scary.
It is. That's a good word. And I know like with Halloween coming up, this wasn't an intentional like Halloween movie, but even the music constantly, like every time that guy came,
it was so dramatic.
It was so dramatic, like unnecessary. Like it just reminded me of the Finding Nemo movie with that little girl Darla. Poor Pobrecita. Every time she came on to play the psycho music, it's like this is unnecessary. Like we can have we should have like optimistic music playing in the background, like to give us hope. At the end of it,
Yeah.
Really dark space. Like it just got me, that movie.
You woke up in the middle of the night shaking and sweating. Well, the other thing that they mentioned that I kind of like argue is my counter argument is that they use a lot of fear tactics. And I've never liked documentaries because if these people are and they're very intelligent, right? They're like creators of like Facebook and like Instagram and like Pinterest platforms, which we're all addicted to, or I am. But so they're really like intelligent people, but they didn't offer too many solutions. They did this whole thing and they just scared you. And so I don't know, that fear tactic is like, if you're really going to try to be transparent about like some of the stuff that you guys were doing in your companies and you don't like it, so then why are you using fear tactics? Social media is out here. Technology is out here. It's as much as we want to fight it, like with the new generations, we need to learn to understand it and to use it as a tool and whatever to our advantage, because we have to show them, we have to model it for them. And so um it's kind of like anytime I would see like vegan documentaries, they always like scare you to death, and they make you feel horrible about the planet we live in, about the society, human, right? We're just like horrible people. And then I'm like, this one did the same thing. And with the music, it was super dramatic. The mom in there had a daughter, or she had there was a family that I'm like, okay, clearly they're stepping all over the mom. Like, who does that? Like, the mom was like, oh no, my Gen Xer is just, they're so addicted. They can't. I would have like got old school with it and like broke it. Like my mom, if it was that bad, my mom used to literally, this is psycho stuff. My mom used to cut the cord, like the extension cord from TVs, from our TVs. Like, why did you have to destroy the thing? You could have taken it, put it somewhere. Like, what? That's psycho, right? And so, like, I feel like I do some psycho shit like that. Like, if my daughter's to that point where she just can't think or function, I'm like, that mom was being like super weak, like with her discipline. So that's another dramatic, like, that's not a lot of families out here. I hope, that like parents are putting boundaries on certain things to, so that their kids can learn to have a healthy relationship with technology. But I also wanted to say that there were some people that said, oh man, this is so bad. And they have kids, and I see how much they're on their phone, and they're like, this is so bad. And then their kids are just doing what they're doing. So they're so much on their phone. And I said, we can't get them off of it. And I'm like, I don't, that to me is excuses. I'm like, we're blaming the phone, we're blaming, you know what I'm saying, like Facebook and Google, and it's just like, sure, they're spying on us. And I do think that. I've been thinking that. And when I say spy, I mean they're trying to learn our behavior to sell us stuff. Okay, so I don't want it to be like Big Brother spy. Maybe, I don't know. I have no idea, right? If it's to that level, I wouldn't be surprised. I have nothing to hide. So I'm always like, Google, don't judge me, fucker. Because I swear, I'm always like, even when Jessica was over here, I'm like, Jess, they're totally listening. They're totally listening to these words that might come up with advertise. Like, of course this is happening, Like, technology is becoming so sophisticated and so fast that when I do think of human behavior, I'm like, sometimes I think of something and then it comes up, and then I'm like, oh shit. Like, seriously, like, are they at that level of, I thought of this, I didn't say it out loud, and it came up for me as some sort of something, right? Like a video, an
Oh,
ad, a picture. Yeah.
see what I mean? I'm a little
I don't know
scared.
if that's a coincidence. Who knows?
No, it's not a coincidence. They're
Well,
they're the thought police. They have control over what you're thinking. But yeah, Amanda's a child
and
development
like, I
major.
don't have nothing to hide, so sorry.
So as I was saying, like Amanda's a child development major, and she just wrote a paper, or like in your class, like the correlation with children, like young children under 5, I think, and technology, and like how they should not be remotely like that dependent on it. So it is all about parents, but you're right.
Oh yeah.
What this documentary has shown us is the parents need to model it. We need to be the example. Sorry, there's my daughter in the background. That's it. Here comes a chunk.
Aw.
Psych.
Yeah,
No,
I think we.
I think
Go ahead, Amanda. Go ahead.
just going along with like what both of you are saying, you do have some parents where you're like, why can't you just take it away? That would be like the easiest, solution. But I think what, the struggle is like for some parents or families, they feel guilty not giving what their kids want, and maybe limiting what they have or their devices. They think like, oh, I'm a bad parent, how can I monitor their behavior online and their devices, we've seen like in the documentary, the mom literally put the phone in like a timer container, and what did the daughter do? Like, she smashed it, and then she did a deal with her son, like, okay, if you want a new phone, like, what was it, like a week's time or 2 weeks she gave him, and he couldn't even do it too, so now I feel it's just getting more and more addictive, especially with our younger generation. So it's just like, like, where's the boundaries, and I think for some parents it is hard, and it's hard for them to say like no, or even to take it away. But I don't see it as like, like a weakness. It's just, like, what can you do? I feel like some kids will go out of their way to get their devices, or or maybe like if their parent takes it away, they'll go out and get one. If they disconnect the internet, they'll find ways to hack it. Kids are so they can do anything. So it's a real tough subject, especially getting with like the younger ones and younger generations.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think you're right. The parents have, this is a new toy, right? And I want my daughter to learn technology. I don't want her to stay, I want her to understand, you know what I'm saying? Like how it moves, because
Definitely.
this is her
Hmm.
generation, right? Like she was born into like the whole internet. Like we weren't. We're still like, when we were younger, it wasn't there. Now it's like 100% there, and it's going to continue to develop. And so I think, the issue is that like parents aren't modeling healthy behavior because it's moved so fast. And this reminds me of our recent episode of aging, and how there's a disconnection between like generations. We've categorized and separated everything. And so I think parents don't know how, right? Like it's just, this has happened so quick. And I think I have a lot of control because, it's just me and my daughter. Like when she's with me, it's just me and her, right? But when you're saying that, Amanda, I'm thinking about families who it just sort of happened to them, right? It's just like, well, I have my husband and I have my 3 kids and they're different ages. Like, how do you even, like how do you create those boundaries? Like, this is so brand new. I don't know what to do. Me and my husband are just as much on the phone as they are, or right? Like, there's just this disconnection, and so
Yeah.
we can't, because I want to try to model it for my daughter, and I have to keep it real with myself, right? Like if she sees you on the phone, you can't tell her don't get on the phone. So then what can we do? Should we turn off the phone for an hour? You know what I mean? Or like, should we turn it off when we come home from school and don't turn it back on until this time? So I think there's things we can do. Like what I would advise that parent in the video would be like, no, don't take away their technology. I don't believe in that, because it is their new toy, and they should learn how to use it as a tool. But you have to create rules. But that's hard when you're in like a bigger family. Ages are differently. Like I can see how that can be like difficult, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like
I
it is.
totally agree, and I feel like, some of my, I have like an aging class right now in psychology. But we're definitely talking about this, like,
That's awesome.
she's saying like when we're 50, how are we going to handle technology, and she says, you now in your life, how do you explain using something to your parents? And I'm like, wow, like just over time, like I had to think about like, we had to teach our parents how to like text, fax, send emails. My dad sending emails, right, Jess? Like we're telling him how to like, send emails or pictures to us. And then, it's even involved to like, applying Bluetooth to multiple devices. And now it's even, evolved to like Bluetooth on cars, like within like the past decade, technology has changed so much, and it's just like, I'm just kind of fearful of what's going to happen like 10 years from now, and I feel like each generation has like, a different sense of what technology means and how to use it. But I don't think like we should be afraid, because when you hear people talk about technology, like, oh, like, that's not my strong suit, or I don't know how to do this, and this, but it's going to be different for every generation, and it's just changing so rapidly. It's just how do we manage it all, yeah.
I agree. And I like how we always end our podcast with like providing a solution, and this was an amazing topic. And at the end, it's all about control and understanding, right? Of like your own behavior and actions. And that's all we can do. At the end of the day, we talk about it, and I'm still practicing that every day, and it's not easy. But you're right. I don't think technology is bad. I think it's just being mindful of the device in your hand at that moment. Because I'm forever thankful for like GPS. I know we all set our own, but imagine like a GPS. Like I can even fathom when my dad used to use a book, the GPS. I'm like, how did you read this? It wasn't even in English. It was like in Japanese. Like, I already know. And I'm like, how do you know? And me, I'm so
Remember the Thomas guide?
That's it. Yeah, that's what it was called. And I'm like, what?
I remember, yeah.
And I remember
when I first moved back to LA for college. That's when I was gonna have to go to East LA, and like when I got my car. No, and I don't remember, but I just remember having to learn how to drive in areas that I wasn't familiar with. And my Tío Ruben was like, "Here, mija," and he pulls out this huge, like, yellow pages looking book, but it's the Thomas Guide, and he's like flipping through the page, and I was like, "No!" And like, yes, so I'm so thankful for GPS, 100, because I never even understood how to read maps. Like the Thomas Guide, I was like, "This is useless." I still got lost, and I had this whole book with me, like in the middle of who knows where, and I'm just like, I can't.
Plus, side note, you're just bad with directions. Even if GPS is giving you,
That's true.
you'll still get lost, Cindy. I don't care what you say. That's a fact. Even when I go
Well, okay,
to
especially.
Colorado, I'm like, okay, this is.
Oh yeah.
Cindy's like, how did you know that? And I'm like, you lived here for 10 years and you still don't know how to get home? In Colorado,
Wait. In my defense, Jessica's sense of direction is superb, and I don't know. She's just been this way since she was young. Because even when we would party when we were younger, she would be blackout drunk, and she would still get us home. I'm like, Jess, I don't know how we're gonna make it, bro. And she's like, take a left, bitch. Go on, take a right. And I'm like, how? Like in Vegas, anywhere. She was just, and then now that I moved to Colorado, she's like, Cindy, I'm just gonna do it by myself because you confuse me. And I'm like, how did it took me 10 years to learn this route? Jessica already knows Colorado. So you just are very good with your spatial abilities, Jess. I don't know why. You're so good at them.
that's
Props
true.
to you.
Me and Amanda went to
So
Glendale.
don't compare me to you.
No, you're right, Amanda. We went to Glendale the other day, and she drove, and I'm like, never again will I like sit passenger. Amanda's like, Jess, how do we get home? And I'm like, Amanda, this is our neighborhood city, bro. You don't know how to get home from the Glendale Galleria? And she was like, okay,
We did not go. No, we were not in Glendale. We were like in Burbank.
that was such a lie. See what I mean?
Yeah, Jessica's
We
old
were
school with
in
her directions. She's like my uncles and like Abraham. Like they're just like they know this from like they know the neighborhood from the back of their hand.
Yeah.
Right? That's the same.
Yeah.
That's true.
But
yes,
no, I'm thankful for GPS.
For technology and their advancement.
Yes. And I just think that we have to learn the new way to cope with how to set boundaries with our families, with our friends, and we have to start with ourselves. This is like with anything, like we can use this to our advantage. So let's not let it control us like we have let other consumerist behavior control us. Like, for example, fast food. A lot of us in America depend on fast food, right? Like, well, even if it's Subway, whatever it is, like we've become dependent on not cooking from home, right? On like takeout or whatever. And that's a business. The food industry is so big because we don't cook from home. And we don't know what technology can do and with these apps and these behaviorists and people really studying psychology. But like I said, they still hire people from Doritos. Any place that takes themselves serious, I guess, is going to hire psychologists or like people who study motivation and behavior to see how their product can be of some dependency on that dollar because it's a profit. So how I like to distinguish it so we're not like, oh, they're all so bad, because I wasn't being bad. Like my job was super ethical. When I was a personal chef, I was providing a very high quality service. So to me, it was okay. Like the exchange was okay because I'm like, I'm giving you very, I put a lot of thought and effort into my meal prep, into all of the ingredients. It's fresh. I used to personalize, the menu, and so all of this, I'm like, I deserve, right, like the exchange. So I don't think all businesses are unethical, but I think also we need to take a step back and realize that we shouldn't be controlled from it and turn it off. It's an addiction, like a lot of addictions, but I don't want to say like every addiction because everybody's different. Um, I remember when I was teaching at the high school, there was this kid that was addicted to Coca-Cola. He's like, I drink like, the cans, I drink like 5 a day. And I was just like, okay, so you're addicted, right? Like, that's okay. Drink 4 a day for a week. And then the following week, you're going to drink 3 a day. And sometimes, like, people were like, how can you say that, right? Like, everybody wanted me to tell him, like, you shouldn't drink soda, that's bad for you. But inside, like, it creates an addiction. We're going to have withdrawals. We're going to have cravings for whatever that dopamine hit we want. So if you're addicted to your phone, if you're addicted to an app, your phone away for an hour every day. or start doing 30. I mean, whatever it is, like I do want to offer realistic solutions. I feel like some people are super duper addicted. So you can't just tell them, put your phone away, you're a bad person and you're a bad parent. You right? You got to say like, let's everybody put their phone away, and it's not going to be easy, and just go through it, like just start the boundary somewhere so that you guys and your family can have a healthy relationship, so that we're not blaming these corporations, and then also so that they're not taking advantage of us, because any business is going to see our weaknesses and they're going to exploit them. That's the world we live in. That's consumerist America. And yeah, so hopefully that was insightful. Amanda, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And so do you think you'll be off of social media for like ever? For now? Or
I think so. Yep. Probably. I don't see any reason to go back. After everything I just stated, I don't. I think at some point, it's not like, for instance, like my work. Some of the families we do connect with, like on social media. So I'm like, oh man, when I do, become full, like, teaching full time or whatever it is, how am I gonna, make these connections? And in, all of my classes, a lot of the professors rely on social media, like for some of my history classes, hey, what's the newest thing on social media that you guys are seeing in relation to, like, just say, for example, the elections, and I'm just like, I don't know what to say because I'm not on it, and I have to like resort to like other sources and, like word of mouth, honestly. But it's just so different. And, it's just like, it makes me feel like not part of like what everyone else is, but, that doesn't make me feel like, okay, maybe I should get on social media because, everyone else is, but I don't have those intentions or like that urge, to be on it. But like what you were saying, Cindy, I think everyone should have like their modifications, whether if it's just like a little bit here and there, or maybe do things with yourself personally, or if you have kids, have those goals and set those boundaries and limits with each other. Then maybe you'll see other activities coming out of it versus going on any social media or other things. But it has its good and its bad, but it's how you perceive it and what you're gonna do with it.
Yes, that's right. It's everyone's so different, so definitely do what works for you. Thank you for ending on that note. That's beautiful, because everybody's family situation is so different, and so a lot of the time when I tell people, why don't you just meal prep, why don't you just work out 5 times a week, why don't you just this, why don't you just that, and it's like they have whole families, where I'm just talking for me and my daughter, where I can figure it out for one person, right? But like 3 other individuals or a partner, you know what I mean? Like that's a lot. So you're right. It do what works for you, um, but know that you have the power to control it, not the other way around. Just like so that you're not afraid of it. But yeah,
Thanks,
is
Steve,
that it?
for coming on. You were amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Please, please, please leave us feedback. We would love to hear what you think about this topic. It's pretty crazy, but I think it's a good conversation to have, because we are living in this world of social media, and the kids are addicted and everyone's addicted. Not everyone, but we're dependent on it. And so let's have the conversation. Let's continue the conversation, I should say, about how to build a healthier relationship with social media and with our phones. Um, Please follow us on Instagram at Primas Podcast. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We love you. Good night. Bye.
Bye, everyone.